Hello friends, in this video we will try to understand another very important topic, that is variables in sociological research. So let's start the lecture. So what are variables? So variables are like a tools. If you want to conduct any sociological research, these will be tools in which you will fill different values or different characteristics. Say for example, if you want to check what is the impact of education on women's entitlement, so you will make two ratios. X will be the first variable in which you will assign different income level of women, and Y will be the factors which will decide entitlement. It can be the ownership of property, it can be the financial independence, it can have any value. So then we will try to have a kind of basic relationship that is called as hypothesis, which we will be testing. So variables are tools in which we will be filling data or characteristics so that we can analyze the interrelationship. So they help us to understand various social factors which affect one another. If we will not have variables in sociological research, we will not be able to judge the interrelationship between different social phenomena. And thus the theory building in sociological research would not happen. Now there are basically two types of variable. The first is independent variable, the second is dependent variable. As the name suggests, the first independent variable means that these are the factors that we think might cause something to happen. We can change or control them to see how they affect other variables. Say, for example, gender, income, education level, social class, religious affiliation, or political ideology. Now, if we will change these independent variable, if we change education level, then we can understand how it impacts the crime rate, how it impacts the voting behavior. So educational level is an independent variable that will impact the dependent variable. The dependent variable can be anything. It can be the caste. So how the education level, different education level is impacting the caste hierarchy, how social class is impacting crime rates, how different income level impacts the academic achievement, how different genders impact the health outcomes. So the first will decide the second. So if we change, say for example, income level, we can affect the dependent variable because their outcomes or results are dependent on the independent variable, because the way independent variable response changes, the dependent also have an outcome or impact. So it varies according to the independent variable. Let's take an example of the caste census. Say for example, so what will be the independent variable in caste census? The independent variable in caste census can be the property ownership. Okay, the impact can be the academic achievement. The impact can be educational attainment, health outcomes. So these can be the dependent variable, which is dependent on the independent variable, that is property ownership. So by changing the property ownership, we can impact these dependent variables. So this, I think you would have understood it. Now, what are the importance of variables? So first of all, to establish a relationship between two different social factors, social phenomena, it is extremely important to have a variable. How income affects education, how, and then only we can arrive at the conclusion that there is commodification of education. It also helps in hypothesis testing. So if we do not have variable, we cannot have a basic interrelationship between different social factor that we will test while we will do the research. That basic statement that we think is true and which we test is dependent on the variable. Second is to compare and contrast different groups, populations on specific characteristic. The different racial people living in United States of America, and how the different race is impacting their education attainment, their income level, their social status. Everything can be judged based on it, and we can compare the different racial groups, the how the high income level of whites is impacting their other parameters as well. The next importance is quantification and measurement. So variables helps us assign values or categorize data. Okay, so we can categorize different data based on the variables. And we can quantify also. If we do not have variables, how can we quantify different things? Like say for example, research of Oxfam report. With the use of variables only, they came to a conclusion that the 10% owns more than 90% of property in the country. Okay. It is also extremely helpful in data analysis as well as interpretation. All the statistical analysis, data management, these all are dependent on variables. And after all, if we do not have variables, we cannot formulate a hypothesis. When we cannot formulate a hypothesis, we cannot have a theory. So it develops a testable prediction about how independent and dependent variables relate. Thus, we can say that variables are essential in sociological research, enabling us to study, analyze, and understand complex social phenomena. They help us identify relationship, test hypotheses, and develop theories to explain how society works. This can be a good conclusion. That's why I have written it. There are a number of thinkers and examples which you can quote. You can quote the society theory of Durkheim, in which he had taken several variables, age, sex, gender, division of labor, etc., etc. He had taken. So there were different variables that he had utilized while conducting the sociological research. This is a very good example. There are sociological research by symbolic interactionist, etc., phenomenologist on juvenile delinquency, etc., etc. So you can quote them in this. While if any question comes, quote examples of thinkers who have utilized this. So this will help you to gain extra marks. And be very concise, be very precise in such questions, because these questions are not much of analysis. You have to be very brief and precise in such questions of Unit 3. Unlike other chapters questions like thinkers and all, where you will have to do a more analysis also. So I hope this was helpful for you. Take care. Best wishes.